So anyway, like I said, Nixon himself would really have like weight, like on the neighborhood sense and things and stuff, right? Because you'd be like, like there's those two guys, like last year. Two guys that were they were arrested. That's right, they got arrested. They got arrested, and for what? They got arrested because they attacked Pearl Harbor, and this was like about a year and a half ago, like 2 years ago and stuff, right? And I guess they were drunk, and it was actually on the it was on the anniversary of the actual Pearl Harbor attack, and that's what they got arrested. Because I guess they went around like smashed some stuff up and everything. So like I mean like really that's kind of just like there, when you get in jail and stuff, right? It's gonna carry a little bit of weight and stuff. Niggas is sitting around talking about like a little burglary, even if it's a commercial burglary, which I don't even understand what it is and stuff, right? It probably means they just got you on camera. But anyway, it goes on stuff, right? Then they have like you were sitting around here like, like, what are you guys in here for? We attacked Pearl Harbor. I'm like, oh, that's cool, dude. It's like, walking around with that on your shoulders, that's cool. But anyway, stuff like, and I was thinking about, so it goes back to like Nixon and stuff, right? Where people say, let's blame the president. Let's blame the president, right? The president should not have done that. He shouldn't have. He really shouldn't have. He really shouldn't have had his men break into the White House and see what his competition was up to. But damn it, he needed to know. So I believe that at the same time, things happen and stuff, right? Whatever. So I don't really blame Nixon for that or anything and stuff, right? And then we move forward through some years and stuff, right? It started getting steeper and steeper and steeper. Well, the next really big scandal that came along that I can remember was actually, oh Jesus Christ, what was it? Nothing. Well, nothing during Jimmy Carter's, which who actually came after Nixon and stuff, right, or whatever. But then Reagan was probably like the next big scandal where the whole White House and the whole administration and the whole cabinet is in trouble, right? Supposedly there's some weapons that got sold. There's the Iran-Contra affair and stuff, right? And supposedly some weapons got sold to these people and stuff like that, and somebody got in trouble, and they shouldn't. He shouldn't have did that. So at that time and stuff, right, there's a big giant investigation. If you remember, Auburn North, played it perfectly, and exactly, he did exactly what I would have done. I don't know what you're talking about. But his favorite response, of course, was no, I don't recollect that. No, I don't recollect that and stuff, right? And I think he might have did a little bit of time like Michael Cohen or something like that and stuff, right? We'll get to that conspiracy in a minute. But at the same time and stuff, right? So the premise of like electing presidents and stuff like that, or government official heads who get themselves into trouble sometimes is comical. Anthony Weiner, for example. It was just it was too perfect. I said, oh my God, he got caught. So at the same time and stuff, right? The act of actually electing an official, or especially like the president and stuff. Of course, everything was smooth sailing until Bill came along. Well, no, then there was, of course, well, because if we go past Reagan and we go, after Reagan was really like, nah, George Senior never really had any really big controversies and stuff. Besides the fact that everybody thought he was full of shit. This is I'm declaring war on drugs right now. There's a war against drugs. You're thinking and stuff, right? You're like, damn. For the smart people, we're like, thanks for the warning, dude. But at the same time and stuff, right? And then you move forward and stuff, and nothing ever really happened and stuff, dude, until, then Bill Clinton got himself in trouble with that office temp. you know, or whatever and stuff, right? Now I seen her at a Laker game afterwards and stuff. She really is. She a freak, nigga. I did that shit too. But at the same time, you think about it. You know, at the same time, you know, you're sitting there and stuff, right? And of course, they pulled him in front of the committee and everything and stuff like that. And what really messed him up is because he, you know, he lied at first, and then we had to break down what the actual meaning of a sexual relationship is. Well, you don't call that a sexual relationship? Well, no, I don't. And then all kind of little facts and stuff about cigars and stuff started coming out, and then it was all she wrote. So that was the last really big scandal. But at the same time, it's like, you know, people will sit back and again and again and again and stuff, right? You know, you could sit back and, you know, and look at this kind of stuff, right? You say like, oh, you know, that's just like me. You know, it's like, you know, if you're at work or something like that and stuff, right? You know, or whatever stuff, right? Only you can prevent sexual harassment. But what are the signs? What are the signs of sexual harassment? Let's just say you and your coworker, you see your coworker and her friend coming back from lunch. He's a male.